I first heard this mysterious saint story when I was sitting around a campfire with a group of friends at a Catholic called the Chivalry Camp. No one could remember if it was Saint John Vianney or Saint John Bosco, but I'm going to follow it up with a fascinating true story from Don Bosco's life, which I think corresponds to it. If you know who it was for sure, please put your answer in the comments. The Catholic Men's Podcast, helping you find good works of literature for the Catholic gentleman. It begins, as all good stories do, on a dark and stormy night. The rain pelted the roof of the priest's house, and the wind wrought havoc on loose window shutters. The banging awoke the poor saint, and he sat up in bed. That noise wasn't a loose shutter at all. Oh no, it was most definitely coming from downstairs. Someone was banging on the door. He opened the window to look down in the street, but could see nothing, for the night was completely black. The local folk called it a bandit's moon, completely hidden by clouds, perfect for holding someone up. "Who's there?" he cried out, but the only response was the persistent banging on the door. The priest dressed quickly and made his way downstairs. He lit a lantern and opened the door. Have you ever met someone and just thought something was off about them? The man at the door was the most singularly strange person the priest had ever met. Dressed almost entirely in black and protected from the rain with a long hooded cloak was a mustached man of about 40 years of age, whose expressionless eyes seemed to bore deep into the priest's soul. He stood motionless in the pouring rain until our saint finally got up the courage to ask, "What is it you want?" "My mother is dying, and she wants to make her peace with God." If 40 years in a smoky bar room could have a voice, that was what this man sounded like. The priest composed himself. "All right, I'll only be a moment. I have to get my things." When he returned, the strange man conducted him to his carriage and motioned for the priest to get inside. It looked more like a hearse in the lantern light, but the priest was bound to assist the dying, no matter how alarming the situation might be. He sat down inside while the mustached man sat in the driver's seat up top, and they were off at a rapid pace. It was impossible to tell where they were going in that pitch blackness, but eventually the priest heard a gravel driveway, and they pulled up to an enormous house with 5 huge windows and beautiful rose bushes encircling it. The saint had never noticed the house before and thought that they must be deep in the countryside. There were no servants to answer the door, and no signs of life at all inside, just dark rooms and passageways, decorated in the style of a bygone era. The man motioned him to walk up the main staircase. "First door on your left," he said. Now that was unusual. Certainly a faithful son would want to see it through till the end. All of the priest's senses were screaming at him now, telling him to get out of that house, to get away, to run. But he couldn't. As a priest, his duty was to administer last rites. So after swallowing hard, he made his way up to the room and entered, for the door was ajar. Inside there was a high canopied bed with a curtain concealing its occupant. He approached slowly and gently drew aside the curtain. It was then that some sort of fiend sprang up from the bed, seized the poor saint by the throat, and began choking the life out of him. The priest pounded away at the beast and awoke to find himself in his own bed, gasping for breath. All the nightmares of his life added together could never equal the terror that this one had caused in his very soul. But what was that noise? Yes, it was a steady banging, not of a shutter, but of someone pounding on the door downstairs. It was the same man on his doorstep. The very same. "My mother is dying, and she wants to make her peace with God," he said. This was clearly a supernatural sign. "Don't go! Don't go!" the saints above seemed to be telling him. But as much as the priest wanted to slam the door in the man's face and hide under his bed, he knew that his holy orders obliged him to go. Even if he were to walk into a room occupied by 1,000 demons, he must answer the call and ride with this diabolical man, even if he were riding to his death. That's what God had ordained him to do, nightmares be hanged. However, as they pulled up to the house, the priest truly believed that it was less of a nightmare and more of a prophecy, for there were the same 5 enormous windows with those same wretched rose bushes all around. This couldn't be happening, but the reality of the situation became all too apparent when he encountered the exact same bed with that horrid, ornate curtain surrounding it. He made the most profound sign of the cross he had ever made in his life, for it was likely to be his last. He held his breath, and with one decisive action jerked back the bed curtain. And there, lying in bed, was a small, withered old woman, somewhat startled at his aggressive manner. In an instant, the saint realized that the devil had been playing hob with his dreams and wanted to scare him away from his heavenly task that evening. The strange man was likely a fallen-away Catholic from a wealthy family who regarded his mother and all religious people in general with great contempt. Maybe God allowed all this to test his faithful servant. If that was the case, then our saint passed with flying colors, for the good woman confessed all her sins and died with a clean conscience that very night. From everything I know about Saint John Vianney and Saint John Bosco, this very well could have happened in either of their lives, because the devil absolutely hated both of them. He pestered Saint John Vianney constantly, as we know from a historical account that I've already covered in a past episode on this channel. In fact, the devil said through a possessed person, "If there were 3 upon earth like you, my kingdom would be destroyed. You have robbed me of 80,000 souls." But the reason why I'm inclined to think that it was in fact Saint John Bosco is because he had over 100 mystical dreams throughout his life. You mentioned the word dream in connection with a saint, and I immediately think of Don Bosco. Another reason is that the Freemasons and Waldensian heretics were constantly trying to kill him at every turn because of his widely published Catholic teachings. The Waldensians orchestrated so many traps for him, and one in particular involved a fake sick call. When the saint came to administer last rites, they violently attacked him with clubs. If you'd like to hear that story, when it's finished, it'll appear above me here. In the meantime, you can watch another episode about Saint John Vianney and the devil. God bless you, and Our Lady keep you.